Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mick and welcome back to another Elestrals video. I wasn't planning to be back until tomorrow when I did a live stream, but here we are because kind of unexpectedly, not really that unexpectedly to be entirely honest. I personally didn't expect it, but that's me being dumb. We have a new limited list coming in. We don't have a ban list. No new cards have been banned. You can clearly see we still have these two cards as the only banned cards, Spark It Tritaya. Currently the only banned cards still in the game. But there were a lot of updates made to the limited list. For anyone that missed it, a couple of days ago, at the time of me recording this, it was 3 days ago. Today's the 4th? What's today? Is it the 4th? It's the 4th. There was the biggest Elestrals event that we've had thus far. 115 players, 114, around there. Top 8. It went to top 8 for top cut. There was actually 7 rounds of Swiss, and the person who ended up taking it home was Sunsea Jess on what they called Earth Water Tempo. It's just a flavor of Earth Nexus is basically all that is. And immediately after that, there was a ban list. So basically, what do we expect from this ban list? Well, we sort of already know what's in here. I'm recording this one day late, so everyone sort of already knows. But in that tournament, I believe 13 of the top 16 decks were all Earth. 13 of the top 16 were Earth. I think the remaining ones were Thunder. I think all of them were Thunder. I think 3 Thunder, 13 Earth in the top 16. I might be wrong. There may have been one non-Earth Thunder somewhere in there, but I believe something like that. I think it was 13. It may have been 13 Thunder Earth decks in the top 16. The remaining 3 were all taken up by non-Thunder Earth. I might be mistaken. I don't quite remember. It was something absurd like that, though. There were way too many of these two elements being the top dogs at this tournament. So we absolutely needed to hit a couple of the cards. And you can clearly see here at the top some of the cards that have been hit. If you don't know what's on this list, you're going to be in for a couple of shocks. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, obviously, we do currently only have the cards that we knew from October 1st. Lavalith is here, Resting on Your Laurels, and Earthquake all still here in the limited section. However, there are a couple of other cards in here now. I think there are, 7 cards now on here? Maybe 8? There's a ton more on here. Let's get straight on into it. So right off the bat, as you can clearly see, Equilinks is now limited. This is a card that probably should have gotten limited. I know people like Trishula are thinking that this card should be banned. I can see an argument for it being banned. Personally, I think it being at 1 is fine. If they do ban it, I don't think they actually need to do that much with it. I think realistically all they have to do is decrease its stats. If they do that, then I think it will be a whole lot more fair. But this is a card that absolutely needed to get limited, I think, because it was very similar to Lavalith, where you could just go after their Divine Rune. Divine Rune's seen a ton more play nowadays, which is another reason why Elestrals is also limited. Divines are getting very much limited now. This all makes sense. Currently, what we are seeing all makes a ton of sense. Like, these two cards were probably the biggest, offenders of this game. The fact that Elestrals could just search out a Zeus or a Demeter, typically Demeter, and it becomes a 7 attacker, and it can just automatically trade with something on cast is ridiculous. That's absolutely insane. It's a crazy powerful card that can just do that, and it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Equilinks can also technically do that. It can't search out your Demeter, but the fact that it can not only, if you already have your Demeter, Nexus onto it, pop a rune, and also use the Demeter's effect, make it a 7, and trade with a guy, that was sort of what made Equilinks super powerful and Elestrals super powerful. If both of these cards had 2 attack, I think they would actually be fine. But as it stands, they are both 4 attackers. Both of them were very powerful at doing what they needed to do, so I think limiting both of these cards was the correct decision. The only other thing I do want to mention, Plucky obviously is still a card that searches your Divine. The reason why Elestrals, though, is so much better than Plucky is that Elestrals is an attacker rather than an defender. And as I mentioned, Elechick can just immediately trade the guy on the moment that it attacks. So, or the moment that it's on cast, it can just automatically trade with the guy because you search the meter, make it a 7, and trade with the guy. Plucky cannot do that because you make it a 4. What is that doing for you? It does nothing. That would be maybe kind of crazy if you could use the Divines on your turn when your opponent your opponent declares an attack, but you can't. You can't do that. So, for that reason, Elechick is obviously a much better card than Plucky. I personally actually think Plucky probably should have been like a 2-5, a 3-5, something like that, rather than a 1-4. I think it should have been the 5 defender because if you're going to make a defensive card, you have to make its stats a little bit better rather than a little bit worse, rather than like flipping the stats of them, because having an attack position Celestial a lot of times can prove to be a lot more beneficial than having a defense position Celestial. So that's sort of the idea. The remainder of these cards are kind of shocking. These are the two that like kind of we all basically expected from these. A couple of the remaining cards are a little shocking. Right off the bat, for the third one, we have Arcolith being limited. Arcolith officially limited. I get it. Now, this is a card that probably, especially when Moonrise came out, was probably going to need to get limited, just simply due to the fact that now we have like cards like Titanic Strike in the game, we have Magneros in the game. All of those cards, both of those cards can very much easily benefit from an Arcolith, because if you like already have a Titanic Strike on field or whatever, you normal cast Arcolith. Or maybe you ascend into Arcolith or something like that. But basically, you go Arcolith, right? Immediately after that, you enchant 3. You activate Thunderstorm using 2 spirits off your Arcolith. So you've made your Thunderstorm a free cast now. And all you have to do is expend 1 to pop a guy. Off of a single Arcolith activation, you have now not only popped a rune, you've also popped a guy at the cost of 1 spirit. Oh, technically 3 spirits, because you're using the Arcolith's cast as 2, and then you're expending 1 from the Titanic Strike. And even with Magneros, the fact that it can just get a bunch of Thunder Spirits on itself to Nexus as basically a Nexus bank, you can Nexus off of it. It was going to get out of hand, and even for now, it can not only hit for a lot, it generates a ton of advantage. Arcolith is very similar to Ambrosia, if we're being entirely honest. It's up there. It's up there with like Ambrosia, basically. I absolutely think this card needed to get hit, and I'm actually glad to see it on the limited list. The next couple are a little weird. First, the first rune of this limited list, we have Race to the Top being limited. This is a limit that I personally don't understand as much. I understand it from the standpoint that they are trying to limit the amount of removal in the game. I feel like Cryoblast is actually in a very good spot with like the current removal of the game and how powerful that removal should be, right? I think Cryoblast is a great card for basically looking at removal and determining, okay, how powerful should we make removal in this game? I think Cryoblast is like the best version of it. Obviously, Earthquake just is trades it for a guy. Resting on your Lorsh trades for a guy as long as you meet a certain condition. Cryoblast can reduce stats and potentially destroy the guy depending on what the defense stat of that guy is. And if you pair that with something like a Zeus, you can just automatically deal with like a Galaxy or whatever, because it can just get through 5 defense bodies like it's no other business. So Cryoblast is very cool in that sense. Race to the Top is a little less cool because it just targets 2 guys, destroys the guy with the least defense. That's a little less cool. However, I do want to mention the reason why I believe Race to the Top is a weird hit on here is because Race to the Top is, if we're being honest, it's kind of a bad card. It's bad in the sense that it's a card that if it's the only card in your hand and you have like no board presence, it does nothing. It does literally nothing. It does less than nothing. It's just a card that sits in your hand. The fact that you need Mount Olympus to be cast is cool. But that really hinders the amount of times you're going to be able to activate this card. You could very easily in your opening hand have a Race to the Top and no access to Mount Olympus. It's just a dead card in your hand and you're just starting the game with a 4-card hand. And in situations like that, it's very bad. In situations where it's good are where you're somewhat behind, your opponent has a stadium room of their own, Or they have their own Mount Olympus. You can go race to the top, target 2 of their guys, pop one of them, and potentially cast an Elestral and get in over the next guy. And that sort of scenario is very good, but it's not really a card that I necessarily think should have gotten the axe to being limited. That being said, I do understand, because with the scenario that I described, where race to the top can be activated as long as your opponent controls a Mount Olympus, the person that took down, that won this entire tournament was Sunsea Jess. Sunsea Jess was playing an Earth deck with race to the top in main. The entire reason she did this was if she's playing against Thunder, they're already on Mount Olympus, she can just snipe their guy without doing anything. It is, weirdly enough, a generic card in that sense. If the card said you have to control Mount Olympus, I think Race to the Top would be almost unplayable, because the fact that you have to control it, you have to be winning the stadium battle no matter what, even if you're in the mirror. Well, maybe not unplayable, but it would certainly not deserve to be here. I think the main reason they limited it is because there were non-Thunder decks playing the card as a means to combat against Thunder. And also in Thunder, it is less of a removal option than it's less removal for that deck, which is something to note. The next card is interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, this next card has seen 0 play. It has 0 tops. It hasn't seen play at all. We have limited Pharaoh Geist. Now, I want to mention the reason why Pharaoh Geist got limited is because this is a preemptive hit. Pharaoh Geist was about to be one of, if not the best deck, and one of, if not the most unfun deck we've ever seen in Elestrals. Just because this card was going to be so consistent to get out. You have a lot of different ways you can get this guy out. You can use Lunar Phase Full Moon to get to just not only get Like a Void out. If you have a Pharaoh Geist in hand, you then have the necessary requirements to enchant onto like another guy, ascend into a Pharaoh Geist, and all of a sudden you basically have this unoutable body that can't be outed by anything other than Earthquake, which is currently limited. That not only can't be shielded, your opponent is basically burning themselves for 1 copy to do a whole lot more. It's going to make, and this is a very interesting card to be limited, because with it at limited, you can still do that. But the moment you out it, you're like, okay, I've outed it, now let's start playing the game. This is a much more fair card at 1 than at 3. I think this is a very, very good limit. Especially since I was thinking, like, hold up, Comalis is in the game. Comalis is a 4 attacker, so it's already better than Exaltus. It searches Pharaoh Geist. Is Pharaoh Geist going to be a actually playable card? I didn't do any testing. I haven't seen anyone do any testing. This is just from what I've heard. From what I've heard, yes. Pharaoh Geist is going to be an unbelievably powerful card. The fact that it's been preemptively limited, I think, is actually a very, very good thing. So I think Pharaoh Geist is a very, very good hit. I will definitely still be tinkering with it. I think Comalis being able to search it and then ascend into it very next turn is still powerful. The issue is the moment you out it, it's like you're done. You're done the moment it gets outed. That's sort of the issue with Pharaoh Geist decks currently. But I do really enjoy it. I think this, as a limited card, is going to be a much more fair card. It realistically should be at 1. I think 1's a good spot for it, especially for right now. I think that actually is all the limited cards. There may have been one more that, one more permanently limited, because we have seen some temporary limits, and we are into them. Demeter and Zeus have been temporarily limited from December 14th to January 31st, when Moonrise officially launches for competitive play. Why has this been done? Well, Demeter and Zeus are in a bit of a position where, even though all of these restrictions have been put in place for all these decks, those are still very powerful cards. The fact that you want to get 1 crack at a Demeter and 1 crack at a Zeus is automatically going to make the power of Thunder and Earth go down tremendously. I think both of these cards probably should remain at 1 going into Moonrise. I could see an argument against that, especially with the team showing that. I think, though, it is a good thing to keep them limited until Moonrise and see how well they fare during Moonrise. I think these two cards are, without a doubt, the two best Divine Runes in the game. They are not even a question. These are the two best Divine Runes in the game because they're stat-changing effects. Stat-changing effects are very, very powerful in this game because with the right amount of stat changes, you can just automatically trade with something. There's a reason Argo Necklace has seen a ton of play right now, is because you just get a +5 on a battle trick. That is crazy, unbelievable stuff. That is absolutely insane that I can even do that. It's crazy. It's ridiculous that it can do that. So the fact that Demeter and Zeus are now limited, you're getting less cracks at it. I think this is actually a very, very fair limit. And for me, being a Wind Burn player myself and a Frost Nexus player, let's go. My decks are automatically playable. Maybe not Frost Nexus, but Wind, I could see Wind actually being pretty powerful now. I'm taking Wind to a tournament, small local tournament. Probably 3 or 4 people are going to be there. But and it should be an interesting tournament. I think it's only going to be 2 rounds of Swiss. It's not a big tournament by any means. But I am taking an updated version of Wind Burn. I've obviously updated the deck, not only for the Elechick limit, but I've also updated it because I needed to add a couple more cards into it. I'm testing out some new strategies with that deck, and I'm probably going to be playing that for the alpha the moment it comes out. I'm probably actually going to be playing Frost Nexus the moment that the alpha comes out because I'm like, I want to play my favorite deck in the game, despite the fact that I know it's bad, but I want to play my favorite deck. We'll see how that goes. Guys, be excited for that live stream coming out on December 6th. Again, for anyone that missed the community post, I am working that day. I get off work at 3:30. Expect a live stream around 4:30 to 5, somewhere around that time. I might be able to actually even do it a little bit earlier. Depending on when I get out, I might be a little bit late at getting out. I've done that. That's happened sometimes. But there should be a bus, like I take buses to get to and from work in college. So that's just sort of how I work. There is a bus that should be around to, that should be there the moment I get off work, and if that's the case, it will be 20 minutes until I get back to my room. So 4 p.m. at the very earliest, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I should say, at the very earliest is when I will stream. However, I'm probably going to need some time to set up. Expect a live stream probably 4:30. But we're not even done. I'm going through, doing a bunch of stuff. We have now a semi-limited list. Casters can only have 2 copies of a semi-limited card in their main and side decks combined. Guys, we are going full Yu-Gi-Oh! We have Viserys in the semi-limited list. This is not the semi-limited list. This is the Viserys list. It's the exact same thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we have Destiny Hero Malicious at 2 constant. I know it's at 3 now. Shut up. I know it's at 3 right now. Shut up. Where we've just talked about the semi-limited list as the malicious list. This is going to be the Viserys list. This is the Viserys list. That's all it's going to be. This is all that is. I think it's really, really cool. I think Viserys being semi-limited is not only a big hit to Earth, it's also a big hit to decks outside of Earth because Viserys was just seeing a ton of play in non-Earth decks. I think this is actually a very, very good hit. This card should not be limited because it's a vanilla if it's limited. It's worse than a vanilla because you can actually shrink its stats if you negate it. But it is a very, very cool card at 2. I think this card, at least at 2, should be something interesting. And as I heard MBT say, and I definitely agree with this, it actually is the third Viserys that gets you. It's not even a joke. It genuinely is the third Viserys that gets you. So 2 for Viserys is actually good. I know in Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot of us meme on the semi-limited list. It's like, it doesn't really matter. For this specific instance, Viserys at 2 actually makes sense. This genuinely makes a ton of sense. I think this card at 2 is very, very good. And that is basically all there is. Guys, I just got to put my final thoughts into this. I think this was a good list. I think there are a lot of hits here that not only made sense and were expected to eventually happen. I think the fact that they're doing it all in one go is very good. Equal Links, Elechick, Pharaoh Geist, Demeter, Zeus, Viserys are all the... I counted 5. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was 6. 6. I don't know how I counted 5, but I think those are 6 hits that really, really do change up the game a whole lot. Arclith and Race to the Top. I like the Arclith hit, but I'm a little shocked by it. Race to the Top, I am also a little bit shocked by. I don't really think it was something that needed to happen, especially with the other hits that we're seeing to Thunder, but I do understand why. However, I do also want to mention that I am shocked that there is one card specifically that is not on this list, and that is Astrabbit. I don't know how Astrabbit keeps avoiding these lists, but I do want to say I kind of understand. I personally believe Astrabbit should be limited for the reason that it's a 5 defender that generates a ton of advantage, that if you don't get rid of it, can generate even more advantage. So it demands an immediate response from your opponent. If you don't have an Astrabbit turn 1, still being one of the best plays in the game, I think it's very, very powerful, needs to be limited. However, I think I kind of understand why they're not limiting Astrabbit. Astrabbit staying at 3 is sort of, I think, the Elestrals team saying, Astrabbit, they are seeing Astrabbit as a generic card. The fact that every single deck can play Astrabbit, just by, if you're in Thunder, you can play it the best because you can obviously Nexus onto it and stuff like that. But in decks that are not Thunder, the fact that they can still play it and have a slightly worse effect because they can't get the additional benefit into that, I think they consider that not only cool, but healthy for the game. And if they do, I understand that. I understand. I just think Astrabbit should be limited because having multiple of it as a consistency tool, not only it being at 3 is more consistent to have in your opening hand, but as a consistency tool, it can search the cards that protect it. It can search more Astrabbits. There's a lot of things that Astrabbit can do that make me want to think it's limited, but I think the reason they're not limited is because they see it as a generic card. And it's not an annoying generic card like Sparkit. Well, Sparkit wasn't generic, but it's not an annoying card in the sense of Sparkit, where all it does is generate you card advantage. It's not hindering your opponent anyway. It's not a floodgate or anything like that. It's not a Pharaoh Geist. It's not a Sparkit. It's nothing like that. It's just a card that generates you a card on cast or re-enchant. That's basically, or Nexus. It just does that. That's all it is. So if they're saying they're not going to limit Astrabbit because they think the card's generic, cool, and fun, then I understand. I understand where they're coming from. I personally believe Astrabbit should be limited, though, just due to the fact that Turn 1 Astrabbit is still a thing. You can't interact with Turn 1 Astrabbit, and that just puts you at... You get put so behind with Turn 1 Astrabbit that I do think Astrabbit should be limited. I don't think it should be banned. I think Astrabbit is a cool card that doesn't need to be banned, but I do believe Astrabbit needs to be limited. Let me know what you guys think about that. I think, though... Every single list that I see go by, it's like, we forgot about Astrabbit. We forgot about Astrabbit. It's the exact same thing with like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pendulums. It's like they always make like a floodgate that makes it so like you have to set spell and traps before you can activate them or something like that. We see that right now with like Diabells and stuff like that. But it's all the time we say like, you forgot about Pendulums. With these ban lists, you forgot about Astrabbit. It's the same thing. But I understand where they're coming from with that, and if that's where their minds are at, I get it. But let me know what you guys think about this list in the comments down below. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys think about it, because I think this is a good list. There are a couple of tweaks I personally make to it. Again, I don't think Race to the Top should have been limited, maybe semi-limited, but I think it should be a temporary thing. I don't think that should be a permanent thing, because I do think Race to the Top is like a fine card for the game. I think Astrabbit should have gone on this list. And other than that, I think this is a pretty good list, and I'm excited to see how the metagame shifts. I will say I do think Earth is still playable. Thunder, maybe not so much. Well, Thunder is definitely still playable. All these decks are still playable because you're realistically only playing 2 Arclith. 1 Arclith is not going to be like the bane of your existence. You're going to hit it a little bit less, but it's not going to be like that bad. You do only get 1 crack at it. You get less Elestrals, but again, that's totally fine. You probably play Plucky now just so you can get to your card. Race to the Top, less removal options. I think this is good. I think this list is good. There's just a couple of things I would tweak about it, but I'm interested to see how you guys would think about it in the comments down below. So let me know what you guys think. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, make sure you slap the like button and subscribe for more. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.